Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Carrier Law Boot Camp on PEME. My name is Ardene Martin, and a lot of you already know me. I am considered the guru of PEME. I am the one who developed the program, process, and procedures for the state of Michigan back in 2010. Before we go forward, I want to give you some history of PEME. PEME was developed because of a class action lawsuit that was brought against the state of Michigan by the Elder Law Group of Michigan. It was brought against us, against Michigan, simply because we were violating a little known federal regulation. And of course, the state of Michigan lost the lawsuit and PEME was developed. And I was brought on board once the policy was written to develop the program itself. And I was the only one from 2010 till I retired 2 years ago, 3 years ago, no, 2 years ago, till I retired, that was handling PEME for the state of Michigan. And I was the one that everybody was calling, sending their paperwork to, and processing the request. So let's continue and get moving forward. Brenda. One of the things we talk about with regards to PEME is not leaving money on the table. People who do not utilize the PEME program and qualify for the PEME program are losing money, and that would be our nursing facilities. What is PEME? PEME is an unpaid medical expense that is incurred in the 3 months preceding the Medicaid application month. Highlight that. It is the Medicaid application month, not the month of approval. And that is where a lot of facilities and caseworkers go wrong. It's also known as the retro months. For those of you who have some background in Medicaid, you understand that with an application, you can also apply for 3 months prior to the application for assistance. So why do we have PEME? We have PEME to assist families that with medical bills that are not eligible to be paid for by Medicaid. For those of you out there who remember prior to 2010, and I'm sure there's quite a few of you, when you were denied retro Medicaid, that was the end of it. You could not get any additional help. Hence, PEME came into being, and that was your last fail-safe to possibly get some help paying those 3 months of bills. It also is to help facilities and providers get paid, which is also part of the whole process. Who can apply? Almost anybody can apply for PEME. Nursing home residents themselves, and believe it or not, I used to get residents who were quite sharp send me in the request. Powers of attorney can apply, guardians, facilities. That's where I used to get most of my requests, next to law firms. MDHSS or MDHHS caseworkers can apply. Attorneys, if a release is signed from the family, attorneys just usually send in their request, and then we just go ahead and verify that they are qualified, or Tracy would verify that they're qualified to do that. And possibly other people can apply on a case-by-case basis. And a good example of that would be, I had a case where a friend applied for the patient. She was trying to assist her, and there was no family, there was no lawyer, and no POA papers, and a family friend filled out the paperwork for her and sent it in, and I did accept that when I was processing the cases. Information that is needed. That would be the nursing home resident's name, their Medicaid or case number, and if you don't have that, they will accept a Social Security number. Months that you are requesting PEME to cover, and verification of the unpaid bills for each month. Now, when you submit those bills, we like to have the date of service on those bills, because oftentimes they will be months old, and the client will just send you their current statement. That does not usually give you the date of service. And Lansing does need the date of service to verify when the debt itself was incurred. Brenda. Okay. Who qualifies? The nursing home residents, again, a lot of this will be repetitious, but I find repetition kind of gets it ingrained. So some things we're going to be saying over and over until it's second nature with you. So a nursing home resident who has unpaid bills, medical, that were incurred in the 3 months prior to the initial application for long-term care Medicaid, and they still have an obligation to pay that bill. Let's break that down just a little bit. Initial application. Initial application is the first time you apply for PEME or apply for Medicaid. A good example of that would be you apply for Medicaid 2 years ago. You go off Medicaid, say for 3 or 4 months. Then you come back in and apply for Medicaid again. That second time, you will not qualify for PEME. We would only go back to that first application if it's a short time span. Now, we have had clients that were on and in a nursing home for, say, 6 to 8 months. They go home for years. And then down the road, they go back into long-term care permanently. Those applications, those requests for PEME, I do know Lansing looks at, and there's probably a 90% chance they would approve PEME for that time period. The second time period, they would not go back to that 5-year-old time period that you were on assistance. Application, and make sure it's a long-term care Medicaid. It cannot be assisted living. Assisted living is not covered under this program simply because the policy and the lawsuit specified long-term care. And an obligation exists to pay, meaning you can't pay the bill and then want a refund. We see that a lot where somebody has already paid the bill and think that we can just go ahead and reimburse them. That can happen. I always strongly recommend, no matter what kind of bills you get in the mail, do not pay them. You do not have an obligation to pay that bill. Only the patient is obligated to pay that bill. Nursing home residents' unpaid bills. This comes directly from policy, which is in BEM 546 for those of you who routinely go into our policy manuals, the state of Michigan policy manuals. The bill cannot be from a month where Medicaid eligibility exists. So if a person's already on Medicaid, and let's just say you get a bill, you can't submit that for PEME. Usually the reason you're getting a bill is 1, it's a copay, or 2, the provider doesn't realize you're on Medicaid and they need that provider ID number. So usually we recommend just calling the provider, giving them the number, have a conversation, and then they will go ahead and bill Medicaid. It cannot be covered by a third-party source, public or private, which means the bill can't be covered by private insurance, or public, which means you yourself paid the bill and you want to be reimbursed. It cannot be from a month in which a divestment penalty has been imposed. Now, when a divestment penalty is placed on the system, the bill cannot be from that month, which means you're not going to get paid the room and board portion of Medicaid when they're in divestment. You cannot submit those bills for PEME coverage. Now, if the bill was unpaid prior to the divestment, meaning let's just say the first month of eligibility was May and your divestment started in May, but you had bills from April, and let's say divestment went for 5 months, you could submit that bill and then they would put the PEME on after the divestment penalty was served. And it cannot have been previously used as a pre-eligibility medical expense. We get those, or Lansing gets those often too. Well, they'll submit the same bill twice. You need to understand that not all medical bills submitted are nursing home bills. They can be hospital bills, doctor bills, podiatry, dental, vision, all kinds of medical bills that we look at. So sometimes they will submit the same bill twice because they didn't pay attention to the letter they received from Lansing as to what was being covered. And they keep getting these bills in the mail because they may not have been able to pay that bill yet. Brenda. Okay, continuing with policy. Nursing home residents' unpaid bills can include the cost of room and board for Medicaid long-term care, meaning these are the type of bills that you can submit. Remedial care and other medical expenses recognized by Michigan law, but not covered under the Michigan state plan. That's a little bit of legal jargon. In other words, it can include things, other medical bills other than long-term care expenses. Nursing home residents' unpaid bills must be reported prior to the first 12 months, 1 year after eligibility for Medicaid, for the time period that Medicaid has been established. In other words, you can only apply for PEME for the first 12 months once they're on Medicaid. If you wait too long, Medicaid or PEME will be denied. So you have 1 year. So let's just say you have an application in May, the worker doesn't get to it till July, it gets approved, the facility kind of forgets about it, and all of a sudden you're rolling around to January, February, and you realize, oh, we have unpaid bills. You can still send those in. But once we've done a redetermination, or a redetermination has been done by the county, you can no longer submit those bills. Now you can submit them right up to the very end, but you can't go over that deadline. How we determine, or how MDHHS determines PEME eligibility. They take the total debt owed, which means they will take the stack of bills that have been submitted. And trust me when I say, oftentimes there are literally stacks of bills. They will sort through them and they will use the ones that can be used. They total up the amount owed, and then they divide it by the patient pay amount. Now that is the amount of money that the client is to be given the nursing home each month. That is usually their income, which is usually a Social Security check, pension, maybe an annuity check, but then they subtract out their Part B and their other health insurance, and they subtract out the $60. So everybody in a nursing home knows what your patient pay is. So you take the total debt owed and you divide it by the patient pay amount, and this will determine the number of months that a person will qualify for PEME. And PEME is an offset program. Now that always stumps people. By offset, the client is not going to pay the bills. The state of Michigan is not going to pay the bills. What is happening is that you use the patient pay money to pay the bills. What happens is in Lansing, they will zero out the patient pay amount in the CHAMPS Bridges system for the number of months that is specified. So actually the facility is getting their full payment, but you use the patient pay to pay either the back bill owed to the nursing home or the hospital or the doctor or whatever has been deemed necessary to be paid by the person who's doing the determination. So here's an example, 24,800 debt divided by 1,500 equals 16.5 months. So the facility will see a 0 PPA in the system, and that means PEME has been approved. Now, usually Lansing will send the nursing home a letter that specifies that this is PEME, so they know exactly what is going on. And if you do see a 0 patient pay in there, you may want to reach out to Lansing if you're not getting a letter. And if it happens to be one of our cases, please reach out to us, because we also oftentimes, well, I won't say oftentimes, we make it routine to send also the nursing home a letter showing that PEME has been approved. But we want to make sure everybody is aware of that. So please feel free to either reach out to us if it's one of our clients, or reach out to Lansing. You can either contact provider support, or you can contact Tracy, and that information will be given to you later on here in the presentation. PEME can be canceled, and that is something people don't realize. PEME can be canceled when the resident passes away, because PEME is an offset program. It's paid for with a patient pay. Once a client passes away, there is no longer a patient pay to anybody. So that cancels PEME. If the nursing home resident or family member who has power of attorney fails to pay the PPA of the outstanding debt to the providers. So in other words, if we find out that they're not giving the nursing home that patient pay to pay the outstanding bill, the state of Michigan will cancel PEME. In the past, I found that really got them to pay the bill. Once we canceled that, they got a letter. They came forward with the money. A lot of times they just don't understand the process, and it needed to be explained to them. The nursing home resident leaves the facility to go home, to go to an assisted living. Again, they no longer have a patient pay. They don't owe the nursing home money. So again, PEME will stop. And the nursing home resident PPA changes to 0. That's very seldom. There are ways that we can, if through here, and if the caseworker is on top of it, there are ways, if there is a community spouse, that you can create a patient pay. But what I'm telling you is the patient pay won't be very large. So if you have a patient pay of $10 and they owe you $20,000, you're not probably going to see all your money. And that's just a fact. So let's go into a few examples. Here we have Iris, single, living in beautiful view. Every facility has a beautiful view. And Iris's family sends in an application for Medicaid on April 16th of 2023 with a retro application for November through March of 2023 to the county office. Now note how many months they're requesting retro. And for those of you who know or remember, retro can only cover 3 months prior to the application. But they have all these bills that haven't been paid, so they're just submitting everything. The worker processes the application in May, which is pretty common. They have 45 days to process an application. And the client is approved effective April 1 with a patient pay of $1,500. Now, the retro MA request for January, February, and March is denied by the caseworker because of assets. Most of the time, what was seen was life insurance policies. That is usually what the clients have hanging out there. And there are ways to get around that, but you do have to know what the policy reads and how to handle life insurance policies to get them to get those taken care of timely. November and December are denied because PEME only covers those 3 months. A lot of people get a little irritated with that when they see that denial, but once you explain policy to them, they understand. They will always try to get something covered if they can. I don't know what all nursing homes do. I do know some of them will write the debt off. I do know some of them have their legal department go after the estate. But again, that's a private matter. Nursing homes are a private entity and they are a business and they have their own practices. But the state of Michigan will not cover more than 3 months of the back bills. Oh, okay. What happens? Well, the PEME request gets processed in September of 2023. I think we missed that date. And the debt total used was $24,750 based on the bills that had been submitted. The worker takes the total amount and divides it by the PPA of 1,500, which was on the previous screen, which equals 16.5 months effective October of 2023. PEME is applied the month after the worker determines PEME eligibility. It does not go back to the Medicaid eligibility. And that is another reason you really don't want to wait a full year to apply for PEME, because you're losing months. And we all must face reality here with our residents in nursing homes. They're aged. You have to look at, oftentimes I would ask, what's the life expectancy of this client? You know, if they say, well, they're not doing well, it's like, well, you might not get all your money. But if they're doing fine, you've got time. But I always stressed, don't wait to apply for PEME. If you know there's going to be a PEME, apply for it right away so that you make sure you can start getting your funds. So in this case, PPA would be zeroed out for October of 2023 through January of 2025, with a partial PPA in February of 2025. If there's a change to the PPA amount, then the PEME would be recalculated. And by that here, because we're going through a year, a fiscal year, remember there's always COLA for Social Security as a rule. So the PPA is going to change. And so Tracy in Lansing she gets a report. And if not notified, she goes through and starts recalculating the offset. Notice is sent to Iris, meaning the client, and to others noted in the file, along with whoever is requesting. So the state is required, even if there's a mailing address, they are required to still notify the client, no matter where the client's at. And so they will go through the list of who has to be notified to send notifications out. Pitfalls of PEME to avoid. There are several. Filing a Medicaid application at the wrong time. This happens more often than not. Remember, I said that PEME only covers 3 months prior to the application month. It cannot cover the month of application. So if you file an application, say May 31st, and you know they have excess assets, the worker is going to deny May and put them on for June, but because the system reflects that is the month of application, you cannot get PEME and you cannot get retro by 1 day. So you really need to think it through when you're processing a request for Medicaid and looking at the assets to make sure you're going to send it in the correct month. If in doubt, you can call Tracy in Lansing, or if it's one of our cases, we're always watching that. We're always trying to be careful of that because we know there is a loss of funds. Telling the residents to spend down, transfer assets, gift or not report assets to qualify. Don't ever do that. That just creates divestment. And granted, it doesn't matter if it's $2. It's still a divestment. They can still deny. If you see a substantial amount of assets, call us. Let us work with you and let us work with the client in order to see what we can do to help with those assets in order to get them qualified, not only just for Medicaid, but for PEME as well. We want to make sure you get all your money. That is the goal here at Carrier Law. That is something I believe in as a former DHS worker, that I feel and felt that nursing homes ought to be paid for the services they provide. And we believe that too. And so if you see a lot of assets, please don't tell them to transfer or to just spend it or to gift it or to not report it. The big thing with not reporting, if it's bank accounts, life insurance, trust me when I say the state of Michigan has resources that you would not believe, that they will track everything down and they will find it. And they may not find it right away, but if nothing else, they will find it upon death. And they would be the ones to collect on it. Not the family, not the kids, not anybody else. They would get it first. Or failure to file redetermination work timely. That happens a lot. You will have cases just sit there, or families that just sits there. They get the redetermination, they put it in a drawer, they forget about it, and the case closes. And then you get 3 to 4 months out and you're going, oh my, oh dear, we didn't do this. They send it in, and yeah, they may qualify, but you won't get PEME. Because again, that's not the initial application month, because there was benefits being received before and it closed because of redetermination. So again, if you are a facility and family is not following through that you know of, contact us, contact the family, we can assist. Contact the caseworker if they're doing it on themselves, make sure everything's been filed. Because you can lose a lot of money at that point in time. Our purpose here is to make the rules work for the people who play by the rules. As I'm sure many of you have heard here with Carrier Law, there are a lot of rules for Medicaid, and we abide by the rules. We always follow the rules. We follow the policies. We don't want to do anything wrong that would make one of our clients ineligible for public assistance. They have earned that public assistance. They pay taxes their whole lives. They're entitled to the benefits that they receive. We also want to see that you get paid as well. You're providing a valuable service to our clients and to any client out there. You don't get recognition for what you do. We want you to know that we appreciate everything you do. You work very hard, and we know that your job is not easy all the time, but we definitely appreciate you. I, who have had parents in facilities, I can't tell any of you enough how much I appreciated what was done for my parents, and the care that they received while they were there. Who determines eligibility for offset? PEME. Tracy Distel took my job when I left the state of Michigan. And trust me when I say she was trying to get that job before I even left. I did train her. She does things a little differently than I do, but also you can believe that Tracy and I still keep in touch. And sometimes I still feel like a state employee because she fires questions at me periodically, and I do answer them. I do help her get through it. But she's very good at what she does, and she's more than willing to talk to you. And she has her phone number and her email. Her phone number was what mine used to be. So most of you, if you're still there, you have it still on your wall. Just change the name. And again, the policy is noted in BEM 546, page 10, if you have any questions about how the policy reads. And she prefers that all requests go to the PEME mailbox. That way they get logged into the system and they're handled timely. She does handle them as they're received, unless there's an emergency for some reason, like one is nearing the due date, meaning you're really up on your year. Make her aware of that with a phone call or an email, and she'll at least make note of it so you don't lose any benefits. Tracy's very good. Well, this one here, Medicaid redeterminations are beginning, so don't let anybody out there lose their benefits. You can call me, and I will schedule a redetermination review with anybody out there and talk to them about what's coming down, what possibly is coming down, because it's been 3 years plus since they've done redeterminations. And they're going to be looking at everything. So you need to make sure you have everything in order and all the paperwork and all your bank statements, everything, because they're going to want it all. So feel free to give me a call or our firm here a call, and we'll be more than happy to set up a time and talk to you about any of it. There I am again. I do look good, don't I? I wish more of you were here. I'd love to meet more of you in person. I do know I talk to a lot of you on the phone. I used to talk to many of you on a daily basis. And I know there's a lot of new ones out there. So feel free to give me a call or give Tracy a call if you have questions about PEME and how it works, or if you have a question if it would work for you. Because again, we do not want anybody to lose any money out there. That is not the purpose. Now, I have no idea what time it is. I do know David is going to show. No, not yet. Okay, do we have any questions? Oh, come on. Yes.
I'm a new business office manager. Where do I begin?
Calling me. As a new business office manager, I would suggest you look through your cases to see where you're not receiving money. And those are the files you're going to want to look at first. You need to know one if they're a Medicaid case or a private paying case. If they're a Medicaid case and you're not receiving dollars because you all have access to CHAMPS, you need to ask yourself why. Why are they not receiving any money? You could start by calling the caseworker, or you can start, if it's one of our clients or me, you can start by calling me, or you could contact Tracy in Lansing and say, what's going on? We're not being paid. Now, it may have nothing to do with PEME. It may have to do with several other factors. And again, Tracy, she probably wouldn't want me to tell you this, but Tracy does other things other than PEME. She is a fixer. So she might be able to go in and tell you exactly why you're not getting paid and what you might have to do to get that money flowing through. But your first thing you want to do as a new office manager is look at your files and say, where are we not getting paid? And why are we not getting paid? Come on, there's got to be a question. Terry.
You talked about Medicaid applications, and there is like a 3-month retro, but that's different than the P.
Yes, yes, yes. Retro Medicaid has always been there. They look at your assets, they look at everything. It's been in the federal regulations forever. So everybody is entitled to retro Medicaid, but retro Medicaid, you also must apply within the first year as well to get retro Medicaid. Now, if you get retro Medicaid, that's straight Medicaid. They'll put it right on the system and you got full coverage, okay? But if you are denied retro because of assets, that is when you come for PEME. That is when PEME can step in. And that is what that lawsuit that I mentioned earlier was based off of. And usually the reason that happened, one of the biggest reasons, and I might have mentioned this, and I think I did, was because a lot of people who were destitute, meaning most of our Medicaid clients are destitute, but you would have these little seniors have this $10,000 life insurance policy in a drawer, and the family member reported it, as they should, and that tossed them, that they lost benefits. And it was those policies that were causing people not to get retro Medicaid because you can't cash them out quick enough. These insurance policy companies, they're a nightmare to work with, especially if they're in Prague. And trust me, I've seen some, or in Israel. saw some of those too. But yeah, they couldn't cash them out quick enough. So they would be denied retro Medicaid. And the nursing homes lost. They lost 30,000, all because of a $10,000 policy. That's when PEME came into being, to cover that time period, to see that the facilities got paid. That was the whole purpose of PEME, was to see that the facilities got their money.
So can you qualify for retro Medicaid and PEME both?
No,
Ardene, can
No.
you repeat the question? 'Cause they're not-
okay. The question was, can you qualify for a retro and PEME at the same time? No, but here's a little nuance. You might qualify for 1 or 2 months of retro and maybe not the third month. And then you can apply for PEME for that third month. And it could be, let's just take the months in a row, January, February, March. Believe it or not, people have qualified for retro for January and March, but not February. It's unusual, but it does happen. You can apply for PEME for February.
You have to apply for a retro in order to get a PEME.
Yes, yeah, you do. And a lot of that wasn't in here, and that should have been explained. Can you,
You have to.
do you have to apply for retro in order to get PEME? Yes, yes, you do. You need to apply for retro. So anytime you submit an application, submit retro right with it. That's the easiest way to do it. Then once a denial is in there, then you can go ahead and apply for PEME for any or all 3 of those months. One more question, maybe.
If you get denied for over assets and month you apply, PEME will not potentially cover it.
If you get denied for over assets in the month you apply, which is the month of application, you won't get PEME. True, you will not. You,
So you have to reapply and include that month, then as retro coverage.
okay, so let's say you apply. Say it again, because
So if you get denied for over assets in the month you apply.
if you get denied over assets in the month you apply, PEME will not cover it.
So would have to reapply and do that month then as retro coverage.
So could you reapply the following month and then apply for retro and or PEME? And the answer is yes. So let's say you throw in an application the first week of June and you realize that it should have been a PEME month. You quickly ask the worker to withdraw that application or make sure you get it denied, because I hate to say it, but sometimes the workers will hold on to those and they will just process it in 45 days and they'll deny that first month and approve the forward, meaning they'll deny June but approve July going forward. So you have to be on top of it. So as soon as you realize that that first month should have been a PEME month or a retro, you ask for them to deny it right away or you withdraw it. And then you reapply the following month.
So we have another one. You mentioned having a PPA created for a Medicaid recipient who has a community spouse. How do we get a PPA created?
There is a form that is filled out. Okay, the question is, you have a community spouse, and I mentioned the fact that you could create a PPA if theirs was 0. There is a form that the state usually submits, and it's called intent to contribute. That can be filled out and submitted, and then they would recalculate the figures, and there would be a PPA assigned. We have done it here at Carrier Law. So if there's questions, please reach out. And we can, at least if nothing else, get you a form number that you can use.
And DHS go back previous to the redetermination of a lot of residents maybe over asset because of stimulus payments.
Stimulus payments, stimulus payments. And I'm not working in Lansing anymore. income, I think, in the month received, an asset any of the months afterwards. But I am not sure that they were looking at stimulus payments. That there was something that came out, and you need to talk to the caseworkers about that, to where they were not going to count those. Yes, I have somebody here who might know.
They weren't counting it for that year, but once that year is up, then.
That's
it's
what
considered the next.
Okay, so somebody here who has dealt with it said they were not counting them in the first year when they were received, but after the first year, if they were still in your bank account, they were being counted. Now, you need to get that money spent and spent on the client. You can't go give it to your sister. You can't take it out for yourself or reimburse yourself for something you did for your loved one in the facility. That would be considered divestment. Any other?
What a common question that you received?
Common questions I received. We've answered a lot of them. Common questions was always, what if we've hit the redebt month and it didn't get accomplished and we're 4 months out? Can I get PEME? No, you can't. And that was always my response. 2 letters, no. Common question, who can apply? Anybody, literally anybody can apply for a PEME for a client. Another common question, are there exceptions to any of the PEME rules? Always. And they're always reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Tracy and I both are under the belief that we work real hard to see that payments go to our facilities, and if we can find a loophole somewhere, we'll find it. So if you aren't sure you would qualify for PEME, I always told people, still apply. I said, you have nothing to lose by applying, because that helps us to review everything in the file to make sure that the case was actually processed correctly, timely. And a good example, I had one where the case sat on the worker's desk for almost 7 months. And, you know, there were bills not paid, and they couldn't cover a lot of them because there were excess assets in those, let's just say in 4 of those 7 months. And you had an application of June, they didn't touch it, let's say till October or November, and there were excess assets. And the client basically lost, but I made a call, and I always talked to policy, and they said it was always a judgment call, but I did give PEME for 3 months for that. Shouldn't have documented it, but it wasn't the client's fault or the facilities. It was a caseworker fault. And when the case, if it ever got audited, she would have been cited for it, but that still wouldn't have paid the nursing home. And so every case is a little unique when it comes to PEME. And I always say, always apply. You have nothing to lose.
Is there a form you need to fill out?
No, no form. Absolutely not. For PEME, there is no form. I refuse, because they send in a name, a case number, and the bills to the address and every place that was provided on the handout. There is no form for PEME. You get enough forms. The government gets enough forms. I refused to develop another state form. It wasn't necessary. The lawsuit didn't require it. All we need is the client name, a client ID, case number, or date of birth, or social security number, and the bills. That's all that is needed to request PEME.
Say something about submitting the application with the other ones and getting it.
Yes, the question is, did I talk about submitting an application with a retro application and then getting the denial? Yes, I always recommend when you're submitting a Medicaid application for nursing home care, always submit the retro application with it. Now, here's a glitch though. You can't just submit an application, because you'll get a denial saying information not provided for retro. And believe it or not, I had people apply, and believe it or not, it was a lot of law firms that would apply for PEME with that little letter saying, well, they were denied retro. And it's like, I don't know that they were denied retro. They never provided any information to determine eligibility for retro. So you do have to provide the income and the assets for retro, primarily the assets. So you can't just send an application signed and wait for a denial. I talk fast.
How long does it typically take once you submit? Yeah.
Okay, once you submit a PEME request, the question is, how long does it take? As with an application, they have 45 days to process. Tracy has been real good, and she's been getting them done in 30 days or just under 30 days. And that's been pretty standard for her. So I would say 30, 35 days. If you don't hear anything by the 40th day, then you need to reach out to Tracy if you haven't heard, if you submitted the request.
Is it recommended if you submit for PEME, that you don't have the resident pay the patient pay amount, particularly if you anticipate them passing?
Question is, if you submit a PEME request and you anticipate it being approved, should you have the resident not pay the patient pay? Absolutely not. They always have to pay the patient pay, because PEME is not retroactive. PEME will only start the month after it gets approved for PEME. Okay, it does not go back to the beginning of the application month. So if you're applying for PEME in March and she approves it in April, it won't start until May. Okay, so you still want them to keep paying that patient pay.
What if you have a case that has been pending for over a year and then it was denied and it's still ongoing? State, would a PEME still be applied for even if it's past year mark due to the court process?
That is the best question. The question was, you have an application for Medicaid that's been pending for a year. Then it gets denied, and now it's in the appeal process. Can you apply for PEME? You bet you can. You can apply. Because you're going to have to wait for the appeal process, because if the client's not getting Medicaid, there's no patient pay. Okay, so you're going to have to wait for the appeal process to hopefully get it approved, so there is a patient pay. Now, would Tracy approve that? She should. If she doesn't, call me. Okay. We would go back to where we can go back to. I guess what I would suggest, if it's in an appeal process and it was denied, I want you to still submit a PEME request. In other words, have a chain of paperwork so that it's in there and there are some dates in there. Okay. Now, she may deny it at that time, but then you have a paper trail. And that is what I and Tracy would look at. We would look at a paper trail to see when it was requested, what was going on with the case, why it was denied to begin with. That would be something Tracy also would look at. And then we would see what we could do at the time. So yes, there is, I would say, a 90% chance you could get PEME approved for a portion of that time period. Would you get it approved for all of it? No, but again, it would depend on the appeal and what the administrative law judge is going to say. Is he going to take that case all the way back to the beginning? Or is he going to take it and say, no, we're going to approve it from this date? Then we have to look at what the legal side is of that. And a circumstance like that, there's a good chance Tracy would send it up to our legal department for clarification. But I would say probably 9 out of 10 times there would be a way to get at least 3 months approved for PEME and possibly more. PEME has a lot of leeway. I'll tell you that. Based on the lawsuit, the first few years I did the program, I had a liaison with the AG's office and I worked closely with them. I also had to develop reports for them quarterly to see the numbers and see where we were going with all of this. And I did have hearings on PEME, as some of you know, some of you filed. I won every single one. As I'm sure you all know, I also won them against very large law firms. And there were several that the AG's office got involved because it was a fairly new program and we were trying to figure it out based on the lawsuit. But yeah, it has a lot of leeway, and I and Tracy were given a lot of leeway as far as what we could approve and what we couldn't approve. Again, the whole point of it was to see that facilities got their pay.
I say you say yes on it.
Okay, so repeat that question.
It was probably underperforming, but I say you say yes on a MA app, I need documentation. That's
If I say yes on an MA application, you need documentation. I would say yes. Document everything. Everything. Always have a paper trail. Good state employees have paper trails. We always cover everything because state employees cases go through not only state audits, they go through federal audits. And what you need to understand with those audits, especially the federal side, that amounts to dollars. I worked for the government long enough to have been sanctioned by the government, by the feds, which means federal money for Medicaid wasn't coming through for 3 years. And it all had to be covered by the state. So audits are very important and paper trails are very important and documentation is extremely important. There are workers who I'm sad to say don't do that, but your better ones document everything. So yeah, I recommend you do the same. Emails, keep your emails, any correspondence you have, keep all of it.
someone passes in a PEME month, they got covered for the whole month.
If someone passes in a PEME month, do they get covered for the whole month? PEME would still be in effect. Yes. Would Medicaid cover you for the whole month? I would have to, I think no. Also, it would depend, I think, on when they pass in the month. If they pass in the first 2 days, Medicaid would probably shut down right away. The key is, do you have a patient pay and did you collect it? If you collected it, then you're good. Most of the time, Tracy and I, if they passed in a month, yeah, we made sure that PEME was still there for a month. We also had requests come through periodically that were still pending and they passed. And I know Tracy has asked me, and I know I did, we would put the PEME on for that month. And if we could put it on for a prior month, if they qualified, we would do that too, to make sure at least you got a month or two of payments if they qualified. So yeah, if they passed away, let's say during the PEME process, yeah, usually it gets put on. So you get something. You just have to collect from the family, collect the PPA.
So it seems like the whole purpose of PEME is really.
So it seems the purpose of PEME is to assist the nursing homes in getting payments, and that's exactly right. That is the whole purpose of it. And in essence, to help the families pay those bills, because especially the older generation, the baby boomers, they always want to pay their bills. They always feel bad when they can't pay their bills. I would always have people saying, I can't pay my bills. I don't know what to do. So yeah, the goal is to not only help them make sure their bills get paid, but to help you, to keep you in business, to keep our clients safe and secure, and to make sure things move forward for them and for you We all know that facilities don't run for free. You're all entitled to a paycheck. You're all entitled to benefits. You're all entitled to your jobs, and we want to make sure you have those because we need every single one of you out there. And we appreciate all the work you do.